Good morning. Shane McCusker here, Intelligent Software. Today we're going to do our webinar on Hotlists. Last week we were doing a webinar on searching candidates through vacancies, and we're going to take that on again today. If anybody's got any questions, please use the chat function, and we'll try and do the questions and answers as they come up or as I notice them coming up. Okay, before we begin, I'm going to give you a quick overview of intelligence and just do a fast recap on what happened yesterday. Intelligence, as you know, is designed to be as simple to use as possible. We only have two screens, a candidate screen and a client screen. This is the candidate screen I'm on right now. Hopefully you can see my screen. We've got the name of the candidate at the top, contact details down the left-hand side. In the middle, we've got their profile, which basically gives you a snapshot of who they are. You don't need to have information in there, but if you do, it's useful because I can see, I know who this person is, I know where they work, and if they're not right, I can reject them quite quickly, rather than having to read the whole CV and go into more detail. In the lower middle section, we've got all the contact information. So every time you speak to them, every time you send an email, every time they ring you or receive an email, any correspondence at all, get it recorded in the lower section. That gives you, a track record and a history of your communication with the person. You can see what's been going on. It also works in a way that it will cross-reference in. So if I send a CV off a candidate to a client, it'll record it against the client record, but it'll also record it against the candidate's record because it relates to both those parties. Pressing the arrow in the top left-hand corner brings me over to my one other screen, which is my client screen. Just move to a client, it's got a bit more information on it. We've got their contact details down the left-hand side. The people that I know that work there, Derek Nickel, John Smith, top middle. Below that, we've got all the vacancies that you're working on. Below that, you've got all the contact history. So looking at a vacancy section, if I click on a job, there's a manager's job. I've got a date. I've got a number of people I'm looking for. It's an active job. I've already done a search and I found some people, so I've got a shortlist result. Last week, we were talking in detail about the search. The way that the search works is that if I press the search button, I can now find candidates and add more candidates onto that shortlist. Two main sections of it. The blue boxes are really about candidate classification, and all the other boxes are about keyword searching. So the problem with searching for candidates, I feel, is twofold. One, you don't want to miss anybody. And secondly, you don't want to find a whole lot of people that are inappropriate. Classifications work really well in terms of getting rid of people you don't want, because I say I'm only interested in those people that work in the IT sector. I'm only interested in senior candidates. I'm only interested in degree qualified candidates. I'm only interested in candidates in the geographical area. If that's the way your classifications are set up, it means that you won't get anybody who's totally incorrect. Whereas if you were to try and do a keyword search for IT, then you're going to find an awful lot of people with the word "it" on their CV, which is pretty well next to useless. All the keywords in that, once you reduce your database down to a smaller size, then your keywords enable you to delve deeply into that and try and pull out just the people you want from this reduction of your total data set. Okay, I'm not going to talk too much about vacancy search today because that's not our topic for today. To complete my round of intelligence, from that vacancy, as I say, I've already done a search on this vacancy and found some people. I'm going to press the view button. It brings me back over to my candidate screen. If there's a delay in you seeing the screens, apologies for this. I'll delay myself. And in the right-hand corner, we've got our shortlist. And as I click on a name, it brings me to Sharon's record. Click on Clara's name, it brings me to Clara's record. And then all those tick boxes work you through the process. You tag them if they're useful, reject them if they're not useful, and thereafter you've got contacted, they say they're interested, you send a CV, you arrange an interview, offer, and accept it. Works you through the process. So that's intelligence, and really that's a sort of a complete overview of intelligence, all the screens you're going to see on intelligence. What we're going to do today is look a little bit more closely at some of the functionality just to try and get people to get more value out of intelligence and learn some of the tricks and tips that we find that some of our clients are using to great effect. Okay, let me go back to vacancy search a little bit and mention just what the process of that is, because I want to differentiate between searching for a vacancy and searching on a hot list. Whenever you have a vacancy, and you search, you're finding candidates and you're adding those candidates onto a shortlist. Okay? And what does intelligence remember? It remembers the candidates that are on that shortlist. So if I'm looking at this shortlist for 3i Group PLC Manager, then these candidates are on the shortlist. And even if I reject them, so if I reject Kimberly here, it records, and then it moves on to the next candidate. But Kimberly's still on the shortlist, because if I click on the Show Reject All Candidates tab at the top, everybody comes back into the list and there's Kimberly. It just shows her as being rejected. Okay, so it always remembers the candidates that are on a shortlist. Yes, you can delete somebody from a shortlist, but that's actually quite unusual, because you'd only want to do that if you added them onto a shortlist by mistake. You want them on the shortlist so that if they're in a rejected state, when you do another search, they're not going to be added on again. Okay. However, that's what intelligence remembers with a shortlist. What it forgets is the criteria that I used to add those people onto the shortlist. So it doesn't know if Kimberly met a classification search or a keyword search or an availability search or a last contact within a particular date search. You know, the shortlist searches, you can have quite complex things. You can do it multiple times, and you don't really know. If I look at a shortlist and it was worked on, say, last week, I don't know if there's somebody been added on to my database since last week that would be applicable for that job. There's no way intelligence knows to automatically add people on to the shortlist for a vacancy. In fact, it would probably be quite inappropriate for it to do so. But that doesn't mean to say that if a new candidate comes onto your system that you wouldn't want to immediately consider them for a vacancy and add them onto that shortlist. So that brings me on to hotlists. And the big difference between a candidate shortlist and a hotlist, I'm just showing you how to get to this. You press the big green arrow, toolbar at the top, menu says Hotlists, select Hotlists. I'm looking at all my hotlists now. The big difference between a hotlist and a shortlist is the hotlists remember the criteria by which I'm creating the shortlist, or the list of people, whereas the shortlists just remember the results and forget the criteria. And the big impact of that is that if I create a hotlist with a set of criteria, then every time I open the hotlist, it's going to recalculate the results. And this has this allows you to create all sorts of different things, because what it means is that you can create a hotlist as a type of search that you do all the time, and have the results that come up which are live. So somebody new goes on, or circumstances change and somebody meets a set of criteria, they will appear or disappear from your hotlist results. So you can do all sorts of clever reports or hotlists in terms of, you know, typical searches you run. You can have, I want to see hotlists of all the new people that have joined that meet a criteria. I want a hotlist, exception reporting hotlists, all sorts of interesting combinations and things and tools that you can do with hotlists. Okay, I've opened up the hotlist screen, and let me just explain what's directly in front of me here. Hotlists have a name. So I've given them different names so I know what they are. In this instance, all these hotlists I'm looking at, I'm the owner of them, so I've created them. It gives me a date created and it gives me a date viewed. It also tells me hotlists can be either public or private. And by default, a hotlist is public. I'm actually thinking of changing this to be default to be private, because it just make more sense. And the idea being is that sometimes you do a hotlist and you want everybody in the organization to see it. Sometimes you create a hotlist and it's really just for you, so you don't want other people to see it, so you can do that. Okay. Okay. The thing about hotlists is you've got criteria. I'm just going to create a new hotlist and see what happens. So I'm going to call it test for today's experiment. And I'm going to click OK. As soon as I do that, it opens up my criteria window, and hopefully you can see that okay. This is not dissimilar to the criteria window that we had with a vacancy search, but there's a few subtle differences to it. But let's focus on what's similar at this moment in time. Vacancy search, we had our two blue boxes, or all the classifications you want box on the left, all the classifications I don't want on the right. And then the bulk of the other text boxes here are about keyword searching. So I can, again, within a CV section, I can use Boolean search. In other words, I can have keywords, logical operator, which means and or not and, not or. and another keyword and so on. So I'm looking for engineer and electronics and RF design and whatever, and it'll find all those keywords in the CV. All these other keyword boxes, search specific fields. So if I know somebody's name and want everybody called Shane to appear on the CV, or everybody on Shane called on the database comes up on the hot list, then I can put that in, and it'll find me all the Shanes on the database. Okay, those are the similarities. Let's look at some of the differences. Okay, for starters, tab up at the top. This is very clever. Whenever you've got a vacancy and you do a search, you can only search candidates. But with a hot list, you can create a hot list to search candidates or clients. And in fact, you can add candidates and clients onto the same hot list result. You just create a page of criteria saying these are the people I'm interested in. So there's no reason that you can't have candidates and clients coming up on the same hot list, which can be useful for some things, although to some extent it's a little bit confusing, but you can do both. So the big thing about hot lists is that you can search any side of the database. Let's go back to the candidate side and let's have a look at this in more detail. As well as having our two classification boxes, we've got a third box, and the third drop-down box allows me to force somebody onto the hot list. Because bear in mind what a hot list does. A hot list forgets the results but remembers the criteria. So if I want Alan Bradley to always appear on my hot list results, then I can force him to always appear on the hot list results. So he's going to appear regardless of any other criteria appearing or disappearing off his record. Because hot lists are dynamic. Every time you open it up, it recalculates itself, and maybe if you were looking for an electronic engineer, and Alan's an electronic engineer who is available, well, maybe Alan isn't available anymore, and so he wouldn't appear on the hot list. But I can say, no, I always want him to appear on the hot list because I'm always interested in him whenever I look at this particular hot list. Because maybe you've got a hot list for a particular type of job, and you want to have people that are going to be, your key contractors that you're going to put out for that job. But Alan, he's always a good person to talk to, because even if he's working, he's unavailable, he might be able to reference somebody or know somebody that could work for you. Okay, the other big difference between hot lists and vacancy searches is that if I want to build up a shortlist for a vacancy, then I can put in one criteria, hit add to shortlist, it does my search, it finds 5 people, adds them on if you want to, and then say, okay, well, as well as that criteria, I want another criteria. I want all the people who match something else, and you can put in change the criteria, add them on, and maybe add another 5 people onto the shortlist, and you can build up your shortlist results by changing the criteria, adding more and more and more people onto it. But with a hot list, you don't do that in the same way, because a hot list remembers the criteria and forgets the results. So you can't build up a hot list, but you can, because what you do is you've got these pages. If, for example, let's just remove Alan from that. I just selected that and hit the delete key, and that removed him, cleared the hot list. Say, for example, I want to find engineers. So anybody with the phrase engineer on their CV. Or I want to find anybody who's got the phrase, what type of other phrases have we got? An engineer, or we see a technician. Okay. I could, of course, if I was doing a keyword search, to say just or technician. Actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do it another way. Say, for example, I want to have anybody who is in engineering, and I say engineer, or I want a different criteria in the word engineer. I go to page 2. Type in engineer, and I go or job type IT. Okay, so I'm looking for anybody who's got the word engineer on their CV who is either classified as engineer or classified as IT. What it's going to do is going to run page 1 criteria, which says engineering, engineer, does that first, builds up my hot list, and then it also does page number 2, all the IT criteria, and gets my engineer. So you build up pages of searches, and then so you can have quite complex hot lists. You can have lots of different pages in here. You can have as many pages as you want in this, and that allows you to build up things. Okay, there's a couple of other subtle things I want to point out here, and these are things we don't really tell too many people, because without getting into this level of detail in these things. It can confuse a lot of our training is done at a fairly early stage of people's use of intelligence, and we can't really get into that much detail. One of the other really nice things about Hotlists is we allow you to put in some criteria that's a little bit dynamic. So say, for example, I'll show you an example. I just closed down this hot list. I want to see all the new candidates who've been added onto intelligence. So I've got my hot list called new candidates. I'm just going to edit that, and I'll show you the criteria. Effectively, what I want is anybody who's been added onto the database in the last week. Now, bear in mind that a hot list remembers the criteria but forgets the results. So whenever I open it up, I want it to recalculate itself. But I want it to recalculate itself based on the last week up until right now, the time that I run the hot list. So whenever you put date created in, I could have put in a date. So last contacted date, say the 1st of the 6th, 2011. I could have put in, I want somebody greater than that date, or I can do what I've actually done, which is says now -7, or indeed -14 for 2 weeks, or -30 for a month, or with positive dates plus or whatever, although I'm not entirely sure how you'd have a date created in the future. And you can put in criteria like that enable you to have a hot list that is dynamic, so that when I open it up, it's relative to today, it's relative to now. So that's quite useful as well, and you can set up quite interesting and complex hot lists if you want to do all sorts of interesting things. Okay, if I want to, hopefully a couple more things, I'm just whilst I'm here. Some of these tick boxes all were on the right-hand side of the candidate search screen. I love these. These are just really, really useful. These are sort of for some of the exception reports or some of the opportunity things you might want to do. So if I want to find anybody who doesn't have any contacts, say for example you want an exception report, I want to see all the candidates who we've added on who we haven't contacted or who haven't been contacted for a period of time. All I do is tick the tick box. I don't want anybody. So I can say anybody whose date created with the last 7 days who we haven't contacted. So somebody's registered in last week and we haven't made any contact with them yet. That's quite useful. Or anybody who's been added on in the last 7 days and we don't have a CV attached to them yet. Well, why is that? That's the problem. That needs to be sorted out. So create a report like this and run it every day. See, who have we added on that we haven't done properly? Because it's all very well creating rules within your organization to say, we need to add candidates on, they need to be done this sort of a way. That's fine. I mean, do that absolutely. But accept the fact that people will make mistakes or omissions or forget things, or maybe you don't have a CV for a candidate and you've written to them and said, please send us your CV. If they don't come back to you, then you don't want that problem just to fall through the net. You want to have some mechanism whereby you can catch the problem, keep your database tidy. It's very important you do that, and hot lists are a brilliant way to run exception reports to do that. So there's a whole raft of those. I'll talk about them maybe in a minute or two when we look at exception reporting and some examples of hot lists. On the client side as well, we've got all the criteria. Most of our clients, although there's a facility to classify your clients, I think that probably the majority of people don't bother overly with that. The reason being is because you tend not to want to search clients in the way you'd search candidates. One, you tend not to have as many clients as you do candidates, companies. And secondly, you tend not to want to find a company. Okay, there are some circumstances you get a really good candidate and you want to find what clients can we push this person out to. That's one way you do a search. But more commonly, you want to find clients in a broader pool. In other words, okay, we want to find all the people who work in a sector so we can send out our sectorial newsletter to them all. And so you tend not to classify and have the same search problems with clients. If you want to, you can create classifications for clients. It's all there for you. And of course, with the hot lists or indeed some of the other searches in there, the client searches, you can do that. Again, all the classifications you want, all the classifications you don't want, and you can force clients to always appear on hot lists. Below that, we've got keyword searches for specific fields, and the way we've laid this out is that this sort of reflects our database structure a little bit. All the fields that are in the client table, like the client's name, their address, their postcode, identifiers, that goes into the client table section. If you want to search for vacancies, okay, so who employs engineers, you can put the word engineer in the job title, move on to page number 2 in the search, and put engineer in the description field. job description field. And so you'll find all the vacancies that have engineer in the job title or in the description. Staff table is about the people who work in the company. So as you saw that staff company earlier on, 3i Group, we had Derek Nicol was the HR manager. I could put in Derek or Nicol in the name field and it's going to go and find that. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention last week on vacancy searches, and I'm just remembering it now. Within the searches, you can also use a thing called a wildcard. And what a wildcard is a character that replaces text. So if I'm searching for vacancies with a job title and I want to say engineering, say engineer manager. Then I could type in engineer manager, but that person could be called an engineering manager or an engineer facilities manager or an engineer and whatever else. And you can use a wildcard character. Now this varies depending on the version of intelligence used. The version of intelligence I'm using is based on our MySQL database, and so I use the percentage sign as a wildcard character. Okay. If you were using our JET database, and you'll recognize it as, well, maybe you won't recognize it because they are quite similar in look, but you would use the star character for the JET database. I suppose, well, if in doubt, give us a call and ask us which version you're using. Most of our new customers are now going on to our MySQL product, and our MySQL product is probably the way we're going to move forward in the future. That said, if you're using a JET product and it works for you, don't worry about it. It just works in a slightly different way, and this is one of the subtle differences between a JET product and our MySQL product, is this wildcard character. So putting a star in there or a percentage sign will effectively say I want any character sequence between the word engineer and manager, so engineering manager, engineer facilities manager, whatever it happens to be. Okay, let's move on now, and let me just remove that, don't need it. And we'll go and have a look at some of the results that we get. So say, for example, we have, there's a hot list I've created called client leads. As I say, within these hot lists, there's a couple of other subtleties I've got to mention. You can also color code them, which is quite useful in the sense that it gives you a visual indicator. What do the colors mean? I don't know. It's up to you. They're sort of traffic light colors. And so you can assign whatever thought you have to them. Maybe as well as that, for the public hot lists, you've got 3 or 4 people in your organization. Everybody takes a different color just to indicate who owns what. Or maybe you separate between your exception reports and your inclusive reports for particular job types. Whatever you want to do. It's just really to help make life easier for you. I can also sort them based on their name. These are sort buttons at the top. So I can alphabetically Z to A or A to Z. Similarly by user, the date on which it was created, sort it that way, the last time it was viewed, public or private, you can sort by that as well. So it's there for you to experiment and play with and do whatever you want to. Okay, so let's have a look at this candidate. It's not added correctly hot list that I've created. If I want to see the results of that, I just press the view button. And up comes my list. At this moment in time, I'm just going to move that over to the side of my screen. I can leave my hot list window open or I can close it. It doesn't matter. And as I tick on a name, in this instance, it's candidates that haven't been classified correctly or added on correctly. So this candidate hasn't been classified at all. And I can also see that, well, this person has a CV, but if I go down this list here, maybe I'll find somebody who has been classified. Yeah, there's somebody who has been classified, but they don't have a CV. So what I'm looking for is anybody, this is one of my exception reports, anybody who's been added onto the system but hasn't been classified correctly, either that they haven't been added on correctly, that they haven't been classified, or they haven't had their CV attached. You can sort that alphabetically, so Z to A to Z. We've got a couple of blank records at the top. An interesting way to find blank records. Obviously, you wouldn't expect to have candidates that don't have a name, so I'm just going to delete that. And it deletes my record. I click on another name, brings me back to my shortlist. You can also put in notes. So information about this candidate. And I can also color code. And what the fascinating thing is that this note relates to this person or company if we're getting a client result, but it's relating to this hot list only. And that means that every time I open up this hot list, this is going to appear beside this person, and they're going to be color-coded in green. And the other fascinating thing about it is, remember, a hot list doesn't remember the results of the list. It only remembers the criteria. So this person may appear sometimes on the hot list. Maybe the criteria change. He's unavailable. He's not seeking work anymore. He's been placed by us. He would disappear off the hot list. He writes you a letter saying, oh, I'm back in the market again. You put him back to seeking work. He might reappear on the hot list at some stage in the future. When he reappears, this note and this color coding will still be associated with him on this hot list. So it's quite nice the way that it manages to operate like that, and you can do all sorts of interesting things with it. You know, if you've got, one of the things that a lot of people use Hotlists for is if you're running, say, a temp desk or a contractor's desk, you've got the same type of people appearing all the time. You'll have notes about candidates, really good candidate, color code that red for really good, or whatever way you want to. Click on the name, takes me to the record. If that person, if you place them, you put them out on contract, you know, in a few months' time they come back on board again, then they'll reappear, and they're always bubbling up through your hot list. And it's quite a nice working sheet to see who you've got. Within the hot list, once you work through it, you can click on the mail button, and you can send out bulk emails, bulk text messages, or mail merges straight to your list of people. In this instance, we're ticking the ones with email addresses, so you can send a bulk email to them. Only one person got it, and a mobile number, so we can send a text message just that one person. The mail merge will get everybody, because obviously you can create mailing letters or whatever it is you want to do. You can also show and reject people in bulk. So if I want to reject all the people in red, then I have rejected my red person. If I want to show all, they come back again. Or indeed, you can just tick the tick box and that'll reject them, and they disappear off. Okay. You can also, now the interesting thing is, once you have a hot list, you can also move people from a hot list onto a short list. So if I click on Amy here, shortlist, I can just press a button and add Amy onto the shortlist for this job that I'm working on right now, which is their 3i Group Manager's position, and it should appear on that, there she is there, on that shortlist. There she is. So it's quite nice to have a hot list set up to give you a list of people that you think are going to be right for a particular job, and then all you do is click on the name, say, oh yeah, is this person useful? Great. Click on shortlist and add them onto that shortlist. If I happen to want to add them onto some other shortlist, I can do that as well. So I could go down and say 3i Group, and I'll pick another job, a sales job, and I can add Amy onto that sales job for the 3i Group as well. So it adds her onto both those shortlists, and I can do that directly from a hot list. Maybe for some of the, you know, the higher volume temping companies that we have, you know, they would want to take a hot list, say all the drivers they have, and allocate them. So they would take the short list and immediately move to, okay, we've spoken to Amy, she's interested, we're going to allocate her to the role. You just click on offer accepted, and you can immediately create an offer accepted window for her and allocate her straight to the job. So that's effectively one click to shortlist button, one click to add to the shortlist, one click, and you've creating an offer record for her. So it's quite quick to work through. You know, if you're allocating 20 temps out to a catering job next week, you can go through, click, 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 add them all onto the shortlist in one go, and then allocate them to those jobs. So it can work quite well as a booking sheet as well. Okay, there's another little button there that I normally don't talk about very much, because it's one of those things that can be actually dangerous in the wrong hands. One thing that we suggested using Hotlists for was to help people who want to restructure their classification. Hopefully, following last week's webinar, some of you will have been looking at your classifications and thinking, you know, we should really improve those in some way, but it can be quite difficult to merge classifications or create new classification structures because of the fact that you have to do it one at a time. Well, you don't really, because on a hot list, you can do a hot list and say, I want to find everybody who matches a particular criteria. Click on this bulk classify and select well, I'm not going to do this now, but you could select, I want to have all those people as banking 1, and then classify all the candidates on that hot list as bank 1, and you'll classify them all in one go. And it's quite a useful way if people want to restructure their classification system. You can create a new candidate classification system and use a hot list to help you work through that a bit faster. Ultimately, I think you shouldn't classify people in bulk based on searches, because at the end of the day, why not just do the search? What value is a classification adding? You should have a look at each of those people and say, yeah, they're worth classifying as that fits the criteria, and classify them as that. If it wasn't the case, I'm not too sure how useful a classification structure would actually be. Okay, so finally then, let me just talk a little bit about some of the different types of reports that you can run, which I've sort of mentioned on passing, and which ones that may be useful. I suppose they fall into two main camps. One is about finding people you want to work with. So you would set up hot lists for, I want to see all my web developers, and you create a hot list of web developers. It's a dynamic list. Color code them when you look at them, so color code them yellow if you've seen them, and that means if somebody new comes on board, if you do open it up and you realize, well, we've got 5 new web developers being added on since last week was the last time I looked at it, they're going to appear in white, so that they'll stand out very obviously to you. If I click one of these, view this. No, I've only got one client there. Okay, let's try candidates not added correctly, the one I was looking at. Click on view. You can see that those people that I've already looked at before, put those notes in, I've color coded them, so it's going to come up with them again. If I look at these other people, then color code them as well, and then we can have some sense that we've had a look at these people. And that means that if this candidate has just added on to the system, then she's still going to be in white, and therefore I'll know she's new. So a nice way to say who's been added on recently, who matches the set of criteria. If there's a set of criteria you're always looking for, anybody who's got, you've got lots of jobs on for quantity surveyors, have a quantity surveyors hot list. As soon as you open it up, you'll see all your quantity surveyors. You'll see anybody who's new that's been added onto the system will automatically appear in your hot list, saying, oh, they're interesting, I can deal with them now. So those are positive results. One of the areas that I think is really useful for hot lists are these exception reports. So, candidates not added correctly is a perfect example. I'll just go back and look at the criteria for that. It's anybody who has not been classified as job type appears up in the criteria. That's page 1. I've got one of 2 pages here. If I go to page number 2, it says, or they've got no CV attached. So page number 1 finds everybody who hasn't been classified as job type. Page number 2 finds anybody who doesn't have a CV, and therefore I'm getting a hot list of people that need to be tidied up. I could have, if I wanted to, put dates created greater than now -7 or now -14, and I'm going to get just the people that have been added on recently. Maybe you want to do that if you've got a legacy of people that have been added on when you moved over to intelligence 6 months ago or a year ago, and a large number of them weren't classified properly. Set that up and have it working through so that it's giving you quality information about the people that are being added onto the system as you work, and keep your system tidy. Here's a nice one. New leads. Just going to show you the criteria here. Oops, I didn't mean the results. Edit to get me the criteria. What it's doing is it's looking for candidates that have been created within the last 7 days, so date created greater than now -7, and it's looking for unknown employers. And what that means is that it's looking for candidates who work for a company that is not one of your clients on the client database. So if these people work for a company we don't know, then chances are that company is a company you should know, because they're employing people that are candidates for yours. If I have a look at the results for that, view the results, click on David here. Oh, there we go. So he works for a whole range of companies. I can tell by the red arrows beside these employer names that those are companies that are not on the client database. Click on Nick here. Yeah, he's working for IBM. We do know those 2 organizations don't appear as clients on the client database. So just run this report every week. Have a look at it. See what companies are appearing on your radar through all your candidate employers, and it'll give you a list of companies you can call to try and do business with them, or say, okay, we see we don't have to say that we know Nick and Nick works for a company and is about to leave there, but it's just a matter of sussing out who those companies are to see should these be clients of ours or not. Maybe if they're making redundancies within their organization, there are other candidates there you can pull from and try and attract other candidates into your organization. So quite a nice hot list to spot opportunities. You can create these hot lists to do different things, and there's all sorts of variation in it. Okay, if there's any, I'm just going to have a quick look through some of these questions that are coming in to see if I can answer it. Okay, can we export the hot list to Excel? Okay, this is something I definitely don't tell too many people. You can, but sure, I'll tell you. Nobody's listening to this much. If I want to have a look at the criteria, well, one, you can click on the mail button and do a mail merge, and from a mail merge you can put all the information you want into an Excel spreadsheet. So that's quite well, it's a little bit complicated, but you can get any field you want. So if you want their name and their telephone number and whatever else, you can create a list in a Microsoft Word document, and then obviously you can just cut and paste it into Excel. There is a quick way of doing it. If I click into our hot list here, I'm going to press some control keys here, so I'll tell you what the control keys are that I'm pressing. I'm pressing control and letter A, and that means select all. You won't see anything happening on the screen. Next, I'm going to press control and letter C, and that effectively means copy, but again, you won't see anything on the screen. And then I'm just going to open up Excel. Takes a second or two for Excel to start for me. Select cell 1A, and I'm going to go control V is paste, and lo and behold, let me just change my coloring so you can see this. I've got my candidates into Excel. Okay, these other columns you don't really need, so I'm just going to delete those. We've got notes there if you want to, but if all I'm looking for is a list of names, there's my list of names. Okay, so, and that little technique works with a whole range of different forms within intelligence. You know, if you want to do it from your vacancy form, for example, hit the drop down, select on vacancies. There's all my vacancies. I want to say I just want the ones for 3i. These are my vacancies for 3i. Go Control A. You'll see all in this form. You'll see all the little selector records being selected. Control C is copy. Move into Excel. Control V is paste. Again, I change my font colors to black so I can see what's going on. And again, I might want to remove some of the columns that I don't need. A few more. There we go. We've got a list of all our companies and our jobs, and maybe even the shortlist results. We'll leave those in. And you can produce interesting, quick little reports to do useful things there. Sorry, there's loads of columns in this one. It's quite a big form, but that's quite a nice way to get information out of intelligence quickly, just by cutting and pasting, putting into Excel, putting it into other documents. We tend not to tell too many people those sort of things. It only confuses them, but it's very simple to do. Three control keys. Control A is select all, Control C is copy, Control V is paste, and you can cut and paste straight from these details into Excel or into whatever you want to do. Okay, do we have any other questions that are coming in there? Okay, no. I'm getting, Michelle's asking me, I think, about some user-defined fields. You're mentioning voice over IP and a few other fields. Within Hotlists, I may be wrong in this because, Michelle, you're particularly good at asking me questions that we don't have a good answer to. If I click on Edit, you'll see that I have some fields here that you won't see, and the reason being is because you'll probably see something else or nothing at all. This space over on the right-hand side of this criteria, these are all user-defined fields. So if you create user-defined fields within intelligence, that's where they're going to appear on the search criteria. Similarly, on the client side, I believe there's user-defined fields, certainly in the staff table. Vacancies, I think, and definitely clients table, we do have user-defined fields in there. I can see there's one there's appearing there. I obviously have a user-defined field, but I haven't defined the title of that field, so that's why that's appearing on the client search form as well. So there is stuff coming in that's appearing on the search criteria that will appear for me because I've set up user-defined fields but wouldn't appear for other people. So there we go. If there's any other questions, speak now. If not, that's us for today. Next week I'm going to do another webinar on, I think next week we're going to look at the shortlist results, and we're going to look through the workflow, so tagging, contacted, interested, CV sent, interview offer, and accepted. Just work through that process to see what happens, to see what subtleties we can bring to it. Maybe look at some of the techniques that some of our clients use in terms of communicating with clients, trying to speed up the process, trying to spot opportunities, work in a more effective and faster way. Hopefully you found today useful. If there's any feedback, please email me, shane@intel-sw.com, or just give me a call, or whatever you want to do. And I look forward to hearing from everybody over the next week or so, and I shall speak to you all very soon. Any more questions, just drop me a line and I'll do my best to answer it as I can. Talk soon. All the best. Bye.